Population ecology. Population dynamics. Populations of species are described by density, spatial distribution, growth rate. Population characteristics. Scientists study how populations interact with each other and interact with their abiotic environment. But exactly what is a population? A population is a group of organisms of the same species. All populations have certain characteristics which can be measured: density, distribution, range. Population density. The number of organisms per unit area. The number of cattle egrets in the photograph is much greater at 1 meter from the water buffalo than at 50 meters from the water buffalo. Spatial distribution. Dispersion is the pattern of spacing of a population within an area. There are 3 types of dispersion: uniform, clumped groups, random. One of the main factors in determining dispersion is the availability of food. The 3 types of dispersion. Uniform, notice the uniform distance between each organism. Clumped groups, the individuals are clumped in groups. Random, the dispersion organization is random. One of the main factors in determining dispersion is the availability of food. Population ranges. Some species, such as the iwi songbird of Hawaii, has a tiny range and is found only on the Hawaiian Islands. Their numbers have declined in lower elevations, due primarily to the susceptibility of an avian malaria, which is carried by mosquitoes. Another species, such as the peregrine falcon, has a huge range, which extends to every continent save Antarctica. Population limiting factors. All species have limiting factors. Limiting factors keep a population from increasing indefinitely. Decreasing a limiting factor, such as available food supply, changes the number of individuals that are able to survive in a given area. There are density-dependent and density-independent limiting factors. Density-independent factors. These factors are independent of the organism's density. They are primarily abiotic and include natural weather events such as drought, floods, extreme heat and cold, tornadoes, as depicted, and hurricanes. This is an actual photograph of a tornado in the Midwest. Density-dependent factors. These depend on the density of the population of organisms. Disease. When population density is high, disease can be transmitted easily between individuals. Competition. A high density of organisms can make food and space scarce. Organisms must then compete for a limited resource. Competition can be between different species or between organisms of the same species. Parasites. Similar to disease, parasites can be transmitted easily within dense populations, and parasites can limit populations. Population growth rate. The population growth rate, or PGR, explains how fast a population grows. Natality is the term for birth rate, which is important in determining growth rate. Another important factor is mortality, or the death rate. Emigration. Emigration is the term for the number of individuals exiting the population. Immigration. Immigration is the number of individuals moving into the population. Population growth models. The population growth models are exponential growth and logistic growth. Notice the exponential growth curve is shaped like a J, and the logistic growth curve has an S shape. Exponential growth model. Exponential growth is growth that is not affected by population limiting factors. It is growth proportional to the size of the population. Exponential growth has two phases. The lag phase is a slow growth due to only a few individuals breeding. And exponential growth. It shows the increase from slow growth to exponential growth. It is also called geometric growth. It is very rapid growth that is not limited by any factors. In real life, there are almost always resources which limit growth. An exponential growth curve is very steep and J-shaped. Even during the lag phase, the growth rate is exponential. Notice the J shape of the exponential growth curve. Logistic growth model. Logistic growth has three phases. It occurs when exponential growth slows due to limiting factors. The lag phase, the slow growth due to only a few individuals breeding. S-curve shows the increase from slow growth to exponential growth, and finally to carrying capacity. Logistic growth exhibits an S-shaped graph. Carrying capacity shows the increase from slow growth to exponential growth, and finally to carrying capacity. Logistic growth exhibits an S-shaped graph. Carrying capacity explanation. The carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals of a species an environment can support. It is limited by food, water, sunlight, space, oxygen, and other factors. The logistic growth curve. Notice the carrying capacity is the plateau phase of the curve where we've reached the maximum population that the environment can sustain. Reproductive patterns. There are other factors to consider when modeling population growth rates. Species differ in the number of births per reproductive cycle, the age reproduction begins, and the lifespan of the individuals. Reproductive patterns are R-strategist and K-strategist. The R-strategist, the reproductive strategy of a rate strategist, or R-strategist, is designed to deal with fluctuations in biotic and abiotic factors. The strategy is to have as many offspring within a strategic time interval, such as when one important resource, such as food, is available. This is a common strategy for small organisms such as fruit flies or mice. R-strategist populations are usually limited by density-independent factors. R-strategist populations usually do not maintain a population near the carrying capacity. In this example, we have flies, which are R-strategists. K-strategists. Some environments do not fluctuate dramatically, which means another type of reproductive strategy is necessary. Suited to a more stable environment, a carrying capacity strategist, or K-strategist, is normally a large organism that has fewer offspring and a longer lifespan. In this example, elephants are K-strategists. K-strategists reach equilibrium at the carrying capacity. Its carrying capacity is consistent from year to year. K-strategists produce fewer offspring because they invest a great amount of energy, resources, and time into their offspring. Populations of K-strategists are controlled by density-dependent factors. Human population. Human population growth. Do you know someone that's had a baby recently? The odds of surviving to adulthood for a human baby are the greatest than ever in the history of humans. Demography. Demography is the study of human population size, density, distribution, movement, and birth and death rates. The population of humans on Earth for thousands of years was very consistent and growing very slowly until the increase beginning in the early 1800s. In the last 200 years, the human population has grown from less than 1 billion to 6 billion by the year 2000. The world's population is expected to double in the next 50 years to 12 billion. For thousands of years, environmental conditions limited the number of humans that could live within its carrying capacity. With changes in agriculture and domestication of animals, the food supply has increased dramatically. Technological advances in medicine have improved the lifespan of humans by reducing parasites and disease. Improvements in home construction have decreased the number of deaths related to exposure to the elements. Human population growth rate. Although the human population continues to grow, the rate of growth has slowed. In the 1960s, there was a sharp dip in human population growth due to a widespread famine in China. The human population growth rate reached its peak in 1962 of 2.2% annual growth. By 2003, the growth rate was 1.2%. In 2050, the growth rate is projected to be 0.6%. The decline in human population growth is due primarily to disease and politically mandated programs. Trends in human population growth. Population growth in different countries can be dramatically different. In developed industrial countries such as the United States, birth rates have declined dramatically, and lifespans have increased to over 70 years. In developing countries, death rates were high. In developing countries such as the early United States, death rates were high as well as reproduction rates because of high infant mortality. This change in population from high birth to death rates to low birth and long lifespan is called demographic transition. If you notice, the population on the earth remained fairly consistent until the 1800s. It began growing, and now it has been growing at a much higher rate. Zero population growth occurs when the birth rate equals the death rate. It is estimated that zero population growth will be reached at 2020 at 6.64 billion or 2029 at 6.9 billion. At the ZPG, numbers that are at pre-productive, reproductive, and post-productive age should be equal. Age structure. Age structure means the proportion of males and females of the population in pre-productive, reproductive, and post-reproductive stages. Rapid growth, example, Kenya. Slow growth, United States, and negative growth, Germany, is occurring in different populations of the world. Here's an age structure chart. Here we're looking at developing countries such as Guatemala, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and slow growth, United States, Australia, and Canada, which are much more developed countries. Human carrying capacity. Scientists are concerned about the global population passing the Earth's carrying capacity. Individuals in developed countries use far more resources, calculated in acres of land utilized, compared to developing countries.